Open your ears and lube up your butthole. It's time for the What Do We Call It podcast. Now, here's your host. It's J-Man. Welcome to the What Do We Call It podcast. I'm J-Man. And if you put a quote in the yearbook about our president and how you don't like him, be prepared for all kinds of hate from uppity Trump backers that do not want to hear you judge him. Case in point, Brainerd, Minnesota. There was a yearbook, and they asked 4 kids what they thought of Trump, our president, our commander-in-chief, and leader on high. And every one of them said something negative. One person called him a rapist and a bigot. But the one that's getting all the media attention is this kid that said, I would like to behead him. I don't like him. Okay, understandable. All day, every day, the 24-hour news cycle, and especially the liberal media, piss pounds into our minds the idea that Trump is fucking up. And I'm not debating whether he is or is not a bad president, but all they tell us is, Trump did this wrong, Trump did that wrong, fuck Trump. It's like a constant shit on Donald Trump train. So I understand why maybe these kids have parents that expose them to the media that puts these ideas in their head. Now, maybe this kid just came to the conclusion that he doesn't like Trump based upon the way that he's been governing our nation since he took over, or lived his life prior to the election. I don't know. I'm not inside the kid's head. But I can understand why, with all that negativity surrounding Trump, he may have come to that conclusion. Because the Donald has not made a very good case for himself. He really hasn't. But to say, I would like to behead him? Are you fucking nuts, dude? You just made a statement that could be taken as an indirect threat towards the President of the United States. If you were a grown man and you said that in an internet chat room and the FBI got a hold of it, eventually whoever ends up leading the FBI now that they fired Comey might get around to sending a few G-men to your house to drag you to a federal holding tank facility and then letting several men in that facility run a train on your ass while you waited for your day in court to say, I was just kidding, I'm not really going to cut his head off. Now, that gets into the notion of censorship. If you say something against the president, do you deserve to be thrown in jail? Now, there's people that have killed presidents, people that have attempted to assassinate presidents. That is why our government takes that shit very seriously. Now, if you say, fuck Donald Trump, he's a piece of shit, and he grabs women by the pussy, and he thinks that black people are his friends when he talks about them poorly, and he says that he loves stupid people and the uneducated, and then he has the audacity to try to enact a Muslim ban against everybody else's wishes, and then a few months later go across the world to Muslim countries in the Middle East and meet their sheiks and shahs and all those representatives and presidents of their country and be like, Islam is not the problem. Evildoers are the problem. It's good and evil. Not all Muslims, but a segment of Muslims, and we need to go after them. It's a very intelligent thought. Maybe you should have led with that instead of the people from 7 countries can't come into my country because they're evildoers and they're losers. I don't understand it. So, being that Trump is a very polarizing figure, he has his supporters. And one of his supporters is Mr. Charles in Charge himself, Scott Baio. The one that everybody thought was such a dreamboat back in the late 80s and early 90s. So, Scott Baio retweets an image of this kid's yearbook page that he saw. And he tags Trump, the FBI, Sean Hannity, and Kellyanne Conway. As if to say, hey, motherfuckers, look what this kid did. Let's punish him. And it remains to be seen if the kid's going to have any sort of fallout from it legally or civilly. I don't know. But now people are demanding that the yearbooks be changed. Or if anything, they never again put a section in there like that to give kids a forum to say negative things about the president. It's a slippery slope because censorship, because it incites violence or riots or antagonistic mindsets is one thing, but doesn't saying negative things or making suppositions that go against widely held notions drum up some ill will to make people think? Like, I'm sure the kid didn't just say to be like, ha, I'm going to piss off everybody. Maybe he really thinks that Donald Trump's an asshole. And he just said he'd like to behead him in jest. I would like to behead him, not I'm going to behead him. Maybe he just would like to see Jihadi John III cut the Donald's head off in an ISIS video. I don't know if the kid meant he wanted to cut his fucking head off, and as ill-conceived as it was a notion to put that in the yearbook, I mean, you're trying to censor people. You don't let the kids say what they need to say. This is an adolescent mind with an underdeveloped sense of propriety who doesn't understand the ramifications when he says something in the heat of the moment. These kids these days, they're used to the internet and anonymity and saying whatever they want on social media, and nothing's going to happen because there's no consequences, because you can't fight anymore and no one's going to beat their ass, and their parents aren't supposed to spank them because then that's child abuse. I mean, these fucking kids grow up thinking they're goddamn bulletproof. They feel like they're Teflon and whatever they say doesn't hold any weight, and you can get away with saying whatever the fuck you want. So if I go into North Minneapolis into the 4th Precinct and I start shouting out the word nigger, I'm not going to be surprised if I get beaten up or worse. Because I grew up in a time where you were held accountable for your actions, where if you got too mouthy, somebody would kick your ass, you'd go to the principal's office, you'd miss a few days of recess, they'd miss a few days of recess, or heaven forbid you get 1 day of in-school suspension, but you didn't get charged with an assault and a trespass and then expelled and have your whole young adolescent academic career ruined. But that's the world we live in. It's an odd situation where it seems imbalanced that people think they can do and say anything and there's no consequences because they're just typing words on a screen or they're writing a quote in the yearbook. And they're like, what are they going to fucking do? And then the law shows up because you threatened the head of our nation. Well, don't fucking be surprised, dildo. You're a kid and you didn't understand it. But guess what? When you make big boy comments about adult authority figures, you best believe that it's time to bend over and take your licks. And I hope they give him 40 whacks with a cane across the ass, because it was ill-conceived. However, it's his opinion and he's entitled to it. Doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. But you got to know that there's going to be fallout from that shit. That's why you have to be careful, kiddies, that you don't just say whatever you want via social media or the internet or in the yearbook. Like, fuck Donald Trump, I hope he dies. Okay, well, the government takes that shit seriously because John F. Kennedy's brains all over the back of a goddamn convertible while the ape-faced Jackie O is crying and trying to, scoop said brain matter back into his now open-headed jack-o'-lantern of a nugget. And this thing was censoring yearbook comments. Kids like to sneak shit in there. You say, what's your senior quote? A lot of schools have done away with it because it turns into a slippery slope of people trying to sneak in doublespeak and secret code. And there was some kid the other day that put a message in his senior quote that said a bunch of nonsense. I don't even have the actual quote. But the first letter of every word, when you take it separately, spelled out, I hate blacks.
Surprise, motherfucker.
Very clever, but don't be surprised if some of your classmates beat the white off of you, all right? Because you kind of maybe had it coming for being an asshole. But this reminds me of when I was a senior and we had to give our senior quotes. I had a friend, Nate. Nate is in the Nathan Scott Phillips Band. They are a folk band. They're really cool. Nate's an incredibly talented musician. He was one of the coolest kids I ever met. He was a freshman when I was a senior, and I never had a little brother, but if I would have had one, I would have fucking hoped it would have been Nate, because Nate was so goddamn cool. And I hope he hears this, because I just want you to know, brother, you influenced me in ways you may not still understand. But when I was discovering punk rock and you were punk rock and you helped me segue into that mindset and immerse me in that lifestyle and that music, thank you for that. In my high school, because it was private, they played it smart. They didn't put the senior quote in the yearbook. They put it in the school paper. So I submitted a quote. My quote was, I bequeath to my friend Nate my hatred for conformity. People need to learn to be individuals and not just follow trends. And believe it or not, that quote did not make it into the final printing because I used the word hate. They only published positive quotes. So I wasn't surprised when mine didn't make it in. But I was upset because they censored me. They took what I said that I thought was meaningful. I was like, fuck you, Old Navy Tech Fest kids, all you preppy jock dicks, because I went to a almost exclusively white, upper class and upper middle class Catholic school. It was private, and it cost money to go there. And most of my friends were white. Most of the kids that went there were white. And most of the kids that were black at my school were only there because they busted them in from other schools to play sports. It is every bit as racist as it sounds to say, hey, black kid that can't afford school here, you're good at football. Why don't you come play running back? Hey, you kid from Minneapolis-Tartan, you got a sweet jump shot. We need somebody to hit threes. Bring your black ass down to the gym. We'll give you some tuition. That's kind of how it went. But back then, I learned that people in power can censor what you say. Whoever the teacher was in charge of this yearbook in Brainerd that didn't think to maybe edit that out or talk to the kid and say, hey, you can't be saying that. You could say you don't like Trump, but don't say you're going to behead him, and explain all the shit that I've already said in the previous 11 minutes of this podcast about the ramifications of making statements about violence against world leaders, especially when you live in the country of said world leader. He's your president. And in the past, they have taken those threats very seriously, no matter how thinly veiled or innocuous you meant them to be. People take that shit seriously. You can't just fucking say you would like to behead the president. You should be able to without going to jail, but it's ill-advised. So if you're going to say something, say, boy, I wish someone from another country would behead our president. You could say that, and then you're putting the onus on ISIS, not on yourself. You're still encouraging it, but you're not saying, I would like to behead him. Come on, kids. It's all about finding a loophole and without breaking the rules, bending them a bit to skirt them to get what you want in a roundabout way. Look at the person who said, I don't like Trump because he's a rapist and a bigot and a sexist. That other kid said some intelligent things. They got the same message across without making it an insult or a vague threat of violence. And maybe this kid that said he wanted to behead Trump should have figured it out. And Scott Baio, this is why everybody liked your friend Buddy better than you on that show, is because Buddy was cool. Buddy wouldn't retweet some fucking photo just to stir the pot like, oh, fuck this kid. I'm going to get you in trouble. I'm going to get my own name in the national debate. Because that's really all social media is a means of jerking off your ego for everyone to see. It's glorified, sycophantic, spiritual masturbation. That's all Twitter is to say things to people, to represent your own ideals, and it's out there for the world to see. Anybody can see it. You want people to see it. Normally, if you wanted to include people in your opinions, you'd sit around the table at dinner. You'd go out for some beers. You'd be at a baseball game on the bench talking about that broad that you fingered last night. And here, smell my fingers. I still haven't washed them. You wouldn't say, hey, internet, last night I fingered some broad. And here's a picture of my fingers with her vaginal secretions on it. And oh yeah, there's her face in the background. And oops, now it's child pornography. Fuck. These kids don't get it. And comparatively, there was a kid who the other day fucking killed himself. 13-year-old kid. He had on his phone some blurry video that was mostly audio of him and some chick in school engaging in a sex act. And they pulled him in. They didn't notify his parents they were pulling him in. And the school liaison officer told him that it could be considered child pornography. And they put the fear of God in this kid. And then he went and walked away from school, climbed atop a 5-story parking garage. A cop rolls by and sees him and thinks, that's weird, but I'm not going to walk up to him or ask him what's up. The cop goes to hide behind another vehicle just to scope it out more. And the kid jumps off the fucking parking garage in the meantime. He didn't make it. He didn't die on impact, but he died on the way to the hospital. And once again, here's a kid in the social media age with a phone, which he shouldn't have because he's young and dumb and full of cum, and he's got some video of what I can only assume is a mouth on his dick. And this girl got upset and brought it to administration's attention because she was embarrassed. She was mortified. He was sharing this with people. Who hasn't gotten a picture of boobies on their phone and said to their friend, hey, check out these tits? Huh? I played with those last night, or I'm going to play with those later. I've done it.
These nuts!
But it's different when you're kids because you don't realize the ramifications of having that video. It qualifies as child pornography. Yes, you're both minors, but it's still child pornography. I've got old photographs of my high school girlfriend, my senior year girlfriend's tits. And guess what? If somebody found those and they could prove her age at the time was less than 18, which I'm pretty sure it's not, technically I guess you could consider that child pornography. I've read the pictures for 17 fucking years. But it's not a memory anymore. No, that's evidence now. Because that's what you don't realize when you're a kid. It's hilarious to take a Polaroid of your dick in a girl's mouth because you can prove that you had your dick in a mouth. Nobody can say, ha, You've never gotten your dick sucked. And you go, no, check it out. I totally have photographic evidence right here. Check it out. And there's my balls on her chin. Look at all that dick in that mouth. It's not photoshopped. And they'll, if they're smart, say, well, I just see the dick. I don't see your face. That doesn't prove anything. And you'll go, shit, I didn't think of that. And then you'll have to take another one of a bird's eye view of you holding it over your shoulder, emo pose, where you look up and smile. Well, below you is your dick in a chick's mouth.
Gotcha, bitch.
That's how you proved when and how many times you got your dick sucked, boys and girls. But don't do that shit because it's child pornography and they will throw you in juvie or try to charge you with crimes and ruin your fucking life, and you'll have to register on the sex offender database and they will fuck your shit up. I mean, that's the overarching theme of this episode, is that kids don't get that there are ramifications for their actions. They're children. And then the law wants to prosecute them like adults and hold them to adult-like standards. And it's not the same because their level of understanding of what's going to happen, the fallout, who they're going to hurt, is not up to par with an adult's. And these kids are so fucking callous because it's the me, now instant gratification generation. And they have never grown up in a world without the internet. They've always known that everything they ever wanted to know was a few button clicks away. You can Google everything, and they don't fucking remember phone numbers because they don't have to. It's in their contacts list. You know what my contacts list was when I was a kid? It wasn't a Rolodex. It was an old calculator that I could save names and numbers in that my mom gave me that she was bored with using. And I had that when I was in high school. Other than that, you had to write shit down. Remember the phone on the wall used to be attached to the wall and a cord, and you couldn't walk more than X amount of feet away? And there was a little plastic piece over part of the wall half of the phone. And underneath it, you could pull the plastic off. There was a piece of paper, and you would write down names and numbers. And then it evolved to cordless phones, and you could have speed dial. And now we have something better than speed dial. We have every number we've ever needed and no longer want to call also at our disposal at the few touches of a button and the pushing of the green call option. This is the world you're in, kids. Learn to adapt, because the people in charge grew up in different times where we were held to different standards, who have more control over your actions because you're a child, not an adult. You might act like one, but you're not one. And you are subjected to the laws of the land like an adult, like everybody else. No one's going to go, well, they're just a child. They don't understand. No, they are a child and they don't understand. But here's the problem. Going easy on these fuckwits because they're young kids. You know? Number one fan Tim, he's got a 13-year-old son. I'd like to think the kid is not engaging in sexual activity because even though I don't know him that well anymore, I believe he's not emotionally mature enough to understand what he's doing. And I'll tell you this. When I was 14, when I lost my virginity, I wanted to fuck only because I wanted to say I did it because I wanted to experience it. And I wasn't ready for it. And when I had it, I'm like, so that's sex. That was it. I wasn't emotionally mature enough or cognitively developed enough in my sense of propriety to understand the ramifications of what I was doing. I even fucked her without a condom and busted a nut in her. And then ironically, she gets pregnant by a guy with the same name as me. Wasn't me. Skinned the cat there. But I was coming with reckless abandon, just trying to get my dick wet. Trying to fuck because I thought I wanted to because everybody was fucking by my estimation. And that's the problem. These kids try to be cool. They're trying to show off for each other. They want everyone to like them. So unfortunately, what you get here is a young child who doesn't know what the fuck they're doing, acting like an adult, and getting themselves in trouble. You need to think before you act, boys and girls. So saith J-Man, 1982. Interact with the show on Twitter at What Do We Call It? That is at What Do We Call It? You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/What Do We Call It podcast show. For the What Do We Call It podcast, I'm J-Man. And that's the end.